It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's start with the headlines. Another first for President Park Geun-hye. Once details are ironed out, she is set to become the first Korean president to visit Iran for a summit, which will likely center on economic cooperation. The leader of the main opposition party officially steps down after naming an interim successor. He expressed relief over the choice and vowed to help the party get ready for an election in April. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is in China to push Beijing to help rein in North Korea's nuclear ambitions. China, however, looks like it's sticking to its position that dialogue with the North is the best way forward. Our starting point for today is the nation's top office. President Park Geun-hye is likely to embark on her first visit to Iran soon to become the first South Korean president to do so. The goal would be to boost economic cooperation with Tehran following the lifting of international sanctions on the country. Song Ji-sun gives us an outline of the possible itinerary.
President Park Geun-hye is scheduling her first summit with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. The presidential office has confirmed that trip is currently under review, and further details were released when finalized. The announcement follows Chinese President Xi Jinping's trip to Tehran last week, which made him the first state leader to visit Iran after international sanctions were lifted. The news also comes after Seoul's foreign ministry on Wednesday convened a task force on economic cooperation with Iran, the Middle East's second largest economy after Saudi Arabia. Securing MOUs for Korean companies is not an option, but a must, with potential competitors already rushing to take advantage of expanding business opportunities. Seoul's outbound shipments to Tehran have shrunk by an annual rate of negative 2.5% since 2010, a sharp drop from the 20% range growth in process before stronger sanctions took effect. But the lifting of sanctions means multiple industries, ranging from manufacturing and construction to the medical and financial sectors, will now likely get a boost. If the summit between Presidents Park and Rouhani is confirmed, the North Korean nuclear issue would almost certainly be on the table as well. President Park has cited Iran as a glowing example of a country giving up its nuclear ambitions and being welcomed back into the international community, when urging Beijing to take a more active role in placing stronger sanctions on Pyongyang.
북한이 핵 개발이 아무 소용이 없다는 것을 깨닫고 이란과 같이 국제사회에 나올 수 있도록 효과 있는 조치를 해주기를 기대합니다.
President Park's Iran trip will likely take place in the spring after the Nuclear Security Summit set for March in Washington. And it's also likely she'll be accompanied by a massive business delegation, as with her Middle East trip last year. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The embattled leader of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea has resigned after months of internal strife and an exodus of members from the party's ranks. Two of those lawmakers announced today as they are joining forces, creating yet another ripple on the left. Shin Se-min gives us the latest.
Moon Jae-in has formally resigned as chair of the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, following up on a promise he made earlier this month. He will now help with the preparations for an upcoming parliamentary election this spring.
I am relieved to be resigning at a time when there is new hope within the party, thanks to new innovations and new recruits.
Moon named Kim Jong-in, who currently chairs the party's election committee, as the interim chief to lead the political bloc into the elections scheduled for April 13th. Kim Sang-gon, the former head of the party's reform committee, will take over Moon's position as leader of the party's membership recruitment drive. Moon has been under a great deal of pressure to resign following a leadership dispute with former party co-chair An Chol-soo and a growing factional feud. An has since left the party, prompting several others to follow in his footsteps and started a party of his own. And in another development, An announced that his People's Party is gaining another member. During a press conference on Wednesday, An said Representative Park Ju-sun, also a former opposition party member, is joining the party. The two lawmakers said they're both aiming for a change of government during the next presidential election. With the merger, An's People's Party now owns 17 parliamentary seats, just 3 shy of what's needed for it to form its own negotiation group. Now, for those on the left, the party's growing strength has raised concerns of a further split in progressive votes in the coming election. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Staying with local politics, National Assembly Speaker Chung Yu-hwa has proposed revisions to the National Assembly law. The move is part of efforts to break the parliamentary stalemate as rival parties' conflicts over unrelated political issues are delaying voting. Kim Young-gil brings us the updates.
National Assembly Speaker Chung Yu-hwa on Wednesday presented the latest bid in his efforts to break the deadlock that has stalled legislative operations for months.
We must amend the National Assembly law the right way. We must take out elements that can be deemed unconstitutional. I proposed measures that will make Parliament more productive.
Chung's plan is to restore majority rule. Under the current law, deadlocked bills can be put up for a vote only when 60% of lawmakers or 180 of the Parliament's 300 representatives agree. Chung wants to drop the 60% requirement and let a majority of lawmakers make the call. The main opposition Minju Party, which had initially been open to Chung's proposal, now says it needs more time with it.
We cannot assess Speaker Chung's proposal at this time. We'll discuss ways to revise the law in the Parliamentary Steering Committee.
However, the party has already rejected a part of Chung's proposal that would put a time limit of 90 days on deliberations for all bills. When the time is up, the bill would automatically be sent to the floor for a vote. There is currently no deadline for deliberations. And believe it or not, this is one point the ruling party can agree with.
Reducing the deliberation time will not solve everything. Although our party's plan may fall short of expectations, the Speaker should still back it.
The party has been demanding that Chung use his power as Speaker to bring long-stalled bills to the floor for a vote. Under the current law enacted in 2012, the Speaker can introduce a bill for a vote only in the event of a natural disaster, a state emergency, or under a bipartisan agreement. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The foreign ministers of the U.S. and China held a press conference following their meeting on Wednesday morning, while Washington pressed on Beijing to cooperate in making progress in dealing with Pyongyang's nuclear program. China remains firm in stressing dialogue on the matter. Our Connie Kim has more.
China is standing firm on its original stance on North Korea's nuclear program, that denuclearizing the Korean peninsula should be resolved through dialogue. The comments came from Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a press conference with his U.S. counterpart John Kerry following a meeting on Wednesday. Wang also said that sanctions should not be the purpose in dealing with North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Kerry is in Beijing for a 2-day visit to discuss the U.S.-led UN Security Council resolution that's being drafted against Pyongyang. Washington is pushing for bans on North Korean oil exports, mineral imports, and a tightening of financial sanctions on North Korea. It's also seeking limits on trade between Beijing and Pyongyang. China, a veto-wielding permanent member of the UN Security Council, has long been against heavy sanctions on its longtime ally. Earlier in the day, Kerry had pressed China to work with the U.S. on contentious issues.
Clearly, we have several important issues we need to find a way to move forward on. One is the issue of the nuclear program of the DPRK, North Korea, a major challenge to global security. One of the most important issues of security to the United States of America.
Another key issue for Kerry is a rise in tensions over the South China Sea. China claims sovereignty over almost all the disputed waters, which are also claimed by Southeast Asian nations and potentially loaded with oil and gas. Kerry was expected to press Beijing to stop constructing artificial islands and airstrips in the disputed waters. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea's consumer sentiment worsened, dipping down to its lowest level in 6 months in January, further stoking concerns of a drastic fall in domestic spending early this year. Gwangju looks into the numbers.
Faced with plunging oil prices and the slowdown in China, Korea's consumer sentiment continued on its downward trend this month. The Bank of Korea's Consumer Sentiment Index came in at 100 in January, down 2 points from the previous month. The figure marks the lowest level since July last year, right after the MERS outbreak took a toll on the economy. The outbreak peaked in June, causing the index to slump to 98, but government-led sale events jump-started spending in the third quarter, helping it reach 105 in November. But with those measures losing steam early this year and the figure on a downslide again, concerns are lingering over a drastic drop in spending. Given such worries, the government has pledged to front-load its budget spending in the first 3 months of this year while introducing new promotional events around the Lunar New Year holiday, one of Korea's biggest national holidays that falls in early February this year. But experts say most of the focus should be on the country's household debt.
With government measures, there won't be a sudden drop in consumption. But to maintain a stable improvement in spending, the government has to work on lowering household debt so it does not put excessive strain on daily expenses.
The monthly index reflects the overall economic outlook of consumers, their living conditions, and future spending plans. A reading over 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's benchmark index ticked up today on an oil price rebound in anticipation the U.S. will freeze its rates. The KOSPI rose 1.4%, closing at just under the 1900 mark. Oil prices rebounded to the psychologically significant level of $30 per barrel, which also extended overnight gains on the U.S. and European stock markets. That boosted investor sentiment and ended a selling spree of Korean stocks that had lasted over a month. The gain was also fueled by market expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will not raise its key rates at the end of its regular meeting on Wednesday due to current market volatility. The Korean government's creative economy centers are making strides toward achieving its creative economy growth initiative. The Gwangju branch, the country's 6th, marked an important milestone today. Kim Ji-yeon outlines the center's achievements during the past year.
Some 300 people, including the Minister of Science, ICT, and Future Planning, gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of the Gwangju Center for Creative Economy and Innovation on Wednesday.
The center in Jeollanam province is part of a network of 17 centers nationwide devoted to creating a business ecosystem of local startups and small businesses, with the ultimate goal of realizing the government's vision of a creative economy.
Each center has a specialty and a corporate partner to provide resources and advice. The Gwangju Center's focus is the automobile sector and hydrogen fuel cell development, and it is funded in part by the country's leading automaker Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors. The Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning says the center was created in line with the government's goal of achieving a hydrogen economy, or a society that uses eco-friendly hydrogen as its main energy source.
One of the center's big achievements this year is the creation of a charging station that was completed earlier this month, and I hope through deregulation that more like it can be created in the future. It's a multi-energy source charging facility equipped with a fuel cell generator that can charge both electric and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
The ministry says the center has fostered 10 hydrogen-related venture firms over the past year, attracting roughly $4.8 million in investment so far. On top of that, the ministry says the center has helped the region's auto industry save roughly $1.8 million over the past year through the establishment of a smart factory that applies Internet of Things technology to production lines. Going forward, the center has plans to build more smart factories in the region. It has already secured an additional $8.3 million for the project from Hyundai and Gwangju municipal government. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Let's talk corruption. Which country is the most transparent in the world? Well, Denmark tops the list of 168 countries, while Korea stands firmly at 37th for the 7th straight year. Park Geun-hye shares with us the latest Corruption Perceptions Index.
Berlin-based Transparency International released the latest edition of its Corruption Perceptions Index on Wednesday. According to the 2015 figures, Denmark tops the list with a score of 91 out of 100, followed by Finland and Sweden as the most transparent countries in the world. In Asia, Singapore received the highest marks, taking 8th place, followed by Hong Kong and Japan. South Korea was ranked at 37th with a score of 56. That's 1 point higher than last year, but the score has basically remained the same level for 7 straight years since 2008. Among the 38 OECD member countries, South Korea ranks fairly low with only 6 countries, including Turkey and Mexico, more corrupt than South Korea. The South Korean branch of Transparency International said last year's high-profile political bribery scandal, which resulted in Prime Minister Lee Gwangju stepping down from his post, and corruption involving defense contractors had a negative impact on the country's ranking. The lowest marks were given to North Korea and Somalia, which tied for 167th place with just 8 points each. The index measures perceived levels of corruption in the public sector in 168 countries based on expert opinion and corruption-related data from various institutions. 박지원, Arirang News.
That's all for now. More updates coming your way at 10 p.m. Korea time. For now, thank you for watching.